let me ask you a question. Do you think when Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, he envisioned an America that would be making 7 million phone calls a day for the express purpose of having phone sex? I mean, today's phone company really adds new meaning to reach out and touch someone, all right? Well, tonight, you're gonna meet them. Phone sex addicts, the girls that give great phone. People who think it should be outlawed, and America's premier prince of porn, Al Goldstein. Break out the raincoats, baby. Phone sex next. Come on. Let's get down to work here, all right? Let me introduce you to some of our guests at home base and at the Loudmouths, various 1 and 2 here. I don't know how many of you have met Bruce Taylor with us before. He's General Counsel, Citizens for Decency Through Law. Bruce, nice to have you with us.
All right, thanks.
You're from Phoenix. Loudmouth 1, Barry Lynn from the ACLU in Washington, D.C. Baby, anything's all right with these birds. Boo. You get picked up for masturbating on the street, they'll get you off, you know. Loudmouth 2, we've got Randy Plesser, also known as Pleasure, I think. You're a phone sex addict. You're from Philadelphia, right? Yes. How are you, Randy? And last but not least, the sleaze of slime, Mr. Al Goldstein. You're putting on weight again, aren't you?
Yeah, Morton, I'm gaining weight. I'm up about 20 pounds, yeah.
Well, up about 20 pounds.
Yeah, I'm depressed about that.
Yeah, sure, you should be depressed.
I have to go back to masturbation.
Listen, that's why you're putting on weight.
I know.
So let me come to Bruce. Bruce, your organization is constantly crusading against obscenity, and you're for decency. Now, do you have a definition of obscenity?
Well, there's a legal definition that was come from the U.S. Supreme Court cases, but basically the courts use the term hardcore pornography to define, you know, where there's PCV, penetration clearly visible, there's explicit sex, it's not supposed to be in print, movies, magazines. That's what the prosecutors prosecute as obscenity. And Al, right?
Mm-hmm. Is that right, Al?
But it's a variable.
Is that right? I see one of your magazines here.
Sure. The front story, the front headline is the one you might want to read.
Yeah. This is a classy magazine, folks, all right, all over America. I got to tell you, true story. I'm walking along with my little girl about 16 years ago, Kelly. She's 5 years old, chewing gum, right? And these things are setting in those newsstands in California. And here is Screw Magazine with a giant blow-up picture of a woman's private, all right, being spread. Mm-hmm. And my little girl, 5 years old, Al, looked at that and said, "Daddy, what's that?" Now, how the hell am I going to explain what that is? So if I told her it was a butterfly, all right? She's 21 years old now and thinks I'm pretty stupid that I thought that was a butterfly. Now, here's a typical Al Goldstein publication, folks. Top story, new life for dead. This is a detective story?
It's about Richard Nixon.
Detective story, I figured. You have pictures in that magazine of penetration.
Absolutely. It's hardcore.
That's hardcore.
Hardcore. And we were acquitted in Kansas in a federal indictment because we had redeeming social value.
Such as?
Oh, yeah, because we deserve to exist, because we deal with reality. If you because again, if you think that sex is dirty, you don't want to see pictures of sex.
That's not what the law's all about either.
You'd rather see pictures of Jimmy swagged with his lies. That's the reality you're into, Bruce.
You know,
yeah, but Al, let me ask you a question.
Taylor.
I happen to know you're a pretty decent guy, all right? Would you want 5, 6, and 7, and 8-year-olds reading that magazine?
No, I would not.
You wouldn't?
No. It's aimed for consenting adults. It really is. And that front page you saw wasn't screwed, because ordinarily the front page is the cleanest part of the paper, because I am aware...
Clean, Ronald Reagan having sex with the Statue of Liberty?
Yeah, it's a political statement that Ronald Reagan has screwed America. It has a political... There's a political statement there. And he probably gave the country AIDS.
Let me come back to Barry. You've been quoted as saying that pornography is as innocuous as a floor wax commercial. All right, at least in the floor wax commercial, I mean the housewife is holding a mop handle, you know. You've been quoted. Do you believe that?
Oh, I thought you said Barry Lynn.
Oh, I'm sorry, Barry.
I don't even remember being quoted as saying that.
I did mean that to you.
I don't remember actually saying that. What I have said is that for most Americans who don't look for pornography or make their careers out of fighting it everywhere in the country, whether the country wants it or not,
that's wrong,
you don't
right?
see it. It's invisible and irrelevant to most people in this country. They don't even subscribe to Al Goldstein's magazine. If he gave it to them free, they wouldn't be interested. Bruce Taylor has made a lifelong career out of going into communities and
trying
saying,
to uphold
let's
morals,
spend,
right?
No.
Isn't that
let's
awful?
Impose his morality on everybody else in the country. There's one question here, one question only. Do you want Ed Meese? Do you want Jimmy Swaggart? Do you want Bruce Taylor and his group to tell you, wherever you are in America, what you can see and read and listen to? And I say the answer is no.
No, and I don't either. But I also don't want it crammed down my throat in some open newspaper stand.
The truth is 99.9% of the cities in this country, you cannot see one sexually explicit image. It is almost invisible. It's even invisible in places like Times Square, except for 1 or 2 blocks. Most parts of this country, nobody is forcing you to see any of it. They're not forcing you to see it. They're not forcing you to see it on television or on the telephone.
Barry,
I draw no lines as far as the government is concerned. The government has no business telling anybody what they can see and read about automobile mechanics or the mechanics of sex.
So anything goes?
Anything goes. Once that's made, once that's published, once that's printed, the Constitution ought to protect it. Thomas Jefferson, you know, collected pornography. He knew about it. He knew it was there.
Barry, you know,
and he didn't say in the First Amendment
really
that the First
Barry.
Amendment protects only political speech. It just says speech. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press. That's why this country is different from every other country on the face of the globe. And I'm proud of that.
Amazing. Let me tell you how amazing you liberal, sap-sucking, pablum-puking... You are the guys who insist on freedom of speech, all right? Every letter I get in this television station is from a liberal pablum puker who wants me off the air. They don't want me to have freedom of speech because I don't coincide with your philosophical
You know what I have to say to liberals all over the country? Liberals tell me all over the country, isn't there some way we can get that Jerry Falwell off the television? And I tell them the same thing I tell you. It's just as wrong to be a liberal censor than a conservative censor, that America is built on the idea that no matter how many people, if 99% of the public in this country thought you were offensive, they couldn't kick you off this station.
Oh, yeah,
but if 51% of the people think that Al Goldstein is offensive,
in federal
they can
court
kick
to
his
stop the
magazine
Meese
out
Commission
of the
report from
newsstand.
coming out. They're the ones that wanted to censor the Meese Commission report. It was his buddy, Bill Lockhart, the ACLU guy in the 1970 commission, that wouldn't print Charlie Keating's dissenting report that said crime statistics show that pornography is harmful. The liberals on the commission are the ones that wouldn't give them the right to even have the thing printed. So ask them about censorship.
Bruce, nobody in the American Civil Liberties Union ever tried to censor the Meese Commission report. The Meese Commission fell because it was stupid, because it was based on a set of lies and of frauds, and the public said no to it. In spite of your lawsuit, it came out, Barry.
All right, let me go to Al Goldstein. Al, I guess it's a stupid question to ask a man whose main claim to fame is that he publishes Screw magazine, but is there any point where you could really refuse to publish something because you considered it too pornographic?
for me, but it has to be an internal judgment. I don't want...
I'm asking for an internal
and I know you are, Morton. I agree with Barry. Okay, right? But Bruce, I'm not going to trust you and Edwin Meese, who's probably going to be indicted any day now. Don't have him be arbiter of morality.
He won't be.
Okay, let me answer the question, because next thing we're going to do the whole Spanish Inquisition, because the things you don't like, you want to make illegal. I think it's an internal judgment for me as an editor, and I would not have anything involving pedophilia or child pornography because I'm opposed to that. Those are the issues. But consenting males and consenting females who want to look at people copulating should be allowed to. How
about you, Barry? Would you draw the line there, too?
No.
Once it's published? No. Anything.
You would let kids, pedophilia, kids having sex, you'd allow that with adults?
To be published?
Yeah.
Once it's there.
If it's published, would you allow it?
Mort, it's a little late in the day.
Would you allow it?
Yes.
You're a pig.
Let me tell you something.
You're a pig. Now, I can understand, pal. I can understand the adult stuff. But when you talk about little kids, that's sick. You're sick.
I'll tell you something that's sick. I'll tell you something that's sick, Mort. I'll tell you something that's sick. I'll tell you what's sick. What is sick is that America does not care. Shut up. America does not care. America does not care. Hey, sir, let me ask you something, sir. What I'd like to do is stop sexual abuse of children in this country. And the way you do that is not by passing laws or making it a crime after the fact for somebody to collect that picture.
You know it's after the fact that it's okay?
No, I didn't say it's okay. What I said, I did not say I said that the
It's already publicized that it's okay by you, then you're as sick as the guy publishing it.
No. I'll tell you something. I'll tell you
Randy,
something. I'll tell
let
you
me
something.
come to Randy a second.
I think that the people...
Randy, I understand you got hooked on phone sex, all right? That's really what this show's about tonight. You had to sell your car. You had to sell your car to pay the bill. Now, how in the hell did that happen? What'd they do to you? Let's hear this story. This is pitiful.
Back in March, in '88, I got myself hooked on Philadelphia's 976 phone line.
You should move. If you live in Philadelphia, it's all you can do is phone sex.
Those phone lines... Listen, Mr. Goldstein.
Let me hear you.
Listen, Mr. Goldstein. Those lines are sick. They are
You're sick for abusing them.
No.
Why
I made
don't
a
you try
mistake.
self-control? In the same way you're fat and I'm fat, are you going to close the donut shop? Take responsibility.
You have to realize these phone lines have no control. Men are calling up on these phone lines, threaten to rape, molest. Is that right?
Why'd you make the call? You should have responsibility for controlling your own life. You want the government to tell you can make 4 calls a day? What are you, a nitwit?
Randy, how much was your bill, pal?
$12,633.
Let me tell you. Let me ask you. Wait a second. Now, this guy got sucked in, all right? Let me ask you. I'm not being confrontational, all right? When you'd had these phone sex calls, would you masturbate?
Sometimes, yes.
All right. Well, wait a second. That's what the hell they're for, all right, for the most part. Frankly, what I don't understand is $12,000 worth of masturbation and you're still fat. We're going to be back in just a second, all right? Gina, is there a Gina in here? Is there a Gina in here? Where's Gina? Gina, come up here a second, will you please? Come here. How are you? You okay? Yeah. All right. Gina's given a lot of people great phone, gang. When we come back, she'll show us what Ma Bell would never show you. Stand by. Let me introduce you at home base, all right, if you don't mind. Gina Clark, was a former phone sex operator. All right, now, Gina, let me come back to you, all right? Before we get into any heavy breathing, let me ask you how on earth you went from high school senior to melting telephones for $1 a minute.
Well, when I graduated from high school, one, I was a sexually abused child. Okay. When I graduated from high school, I didn't have enough money to pay. I had a $3.55 an hour job, and I didn't have enough money to pay my rent, let alone eat, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I saw an ad for dancing for $500 a week. And I started dancing, topless dancing, and the club that I was working at was raided by the police. And I knew I didn't want to go back to that.
Why was it raided?
What?
Why was it raided?
Well, usually with both
Were some of the girls turning tricks?
There was girls doing prostitution and also selling drugs out of those
Were you doing
clubs.
either one of those things?
No.
Okay.
And I didn't get charged or anything like that. I mean, I have a clean record.
Okay, so they
as
closed
far
the
as
club
that
down.
goes.
No more dancing. What does
No,
Gina
they
do
didn't
now?
close it. They
Oh,
didn't close it down. They raided it, but the club's still open today. Anyway, a boyfriend of mine knew the manager of this phone sex place, and he got me an interview, and I got hired.
What kind of an interview was it? What did you have to do during the interview?
Well, you listen to other girls do phone sex, and then you listen to the manager do a call with a guy, and then they put you on the line. And they tell you right up front that, you're going to be talking about mutilation, you're going to be talking about sadomasochism sex, visionary sex, urination.
Visionary sex?
Or not visionary.
I'm a real square. Tell me what visionary sex
No,
is.
I mean, I can't think of the word. Voyeuristic
Oh, voyeur.
sex.
Okay.
Just
it's half
every
these guys
type,
in here.
urination, infantilism, men that were into pretending to be babies and things like that. I mean...
Wow. Well, now this is interesting. Just think of the mentality of the people. Go ahead.
Humiliation.
Humiliation?
Urinary on people. Defecation.
This is all part of it?
Yes.
Well, what's the humiliation? What do they do in humiliation?
One gentleman called up when I was on the line and wanted to be at a movie theater. And he wanted to be urinated on by a prostitute. He wanted to masturbate in front of a screen and be defecated on by his wife.
Gina, wait a second. Let me come back here a second. Gang. Hold it a minute. Gina, does it really work? I mean, where were you when these calls came in, and did you really get into it yourself?
No. We sat in an office. There was like 8 of us working out of the same room, and Santa Claus sat next to me. They had the same, the Santa Claus lines. That was
that
right
reminds
next to me.
You folks out in L.A., do you remember when the kids fouled up the number, were calling for Santa Claus, and they got the phone sex instead?
They had on one...
Really, that happened in L.A. Hundreds of kids, thousands of kids were calling for, hello, is Santa Claus there? And you get some slimy, who's telling the kid what to...
It just shows what a problem.
Well, maybe Santa Claus bought some of them their present.
The Santa Claus line, one phone was for phone sex with Santa, and one was for kids with Santa. And the guy worked both lines.
Phone sex with Santa?
Yeah. People,
if you're Jewish, you can't do that,
people could call and have sex with Santa Claus.
Gina, could I ask you a question?
You like
don't
this,
you
though,
think,
Mr. ACLU, right?
I don't like any of this, to tell you the truth, Morton.
Right,
I don't like any of it, but I much prefer to have people doing it, I suppose, talking over the phone and doing it. Now, I'd like to ask Gina a question. Gina, it seems to me that if we could find a way to keep kids out of those systems, whether the kids are running up bills to dial a Santa, sex with Santa, or dial a sex, we would solve what is the real problem. Well, my problem is that people like Mr. Taylor have resisted that effort for so many years and try to keep even adults away from making a phone call to you or to somebody else in the business.
If the law's
One
enforced
thing
and
is,
it's gone, there won't be any kids hurt.
And if I had my way, I would ban phone sex. But you can't because of First Amendment rights. But you can regulate it, and you can make it so that mentally retarded men can't easily get a hold of it. And you can make it so children can't get a hold of it.
We should make it so children can't get a hold of it. But Mr. Taylor wants adults not to get a hold of it.
Wait a second.
You're not in agreement with anything that's going to take a profit.
Introduce yourself, sir.
My name's Nick Ridgely, and I operate a lot of different services. Some of them happen to be adult. That's a small part of what I do. But anyway, I just want to say that every market that I'm in, all you got to do is call the phone company and say, hey, block this line. And all of a sudden,
what's the phone company charge you for that?
a penny a month in California, not in New York, not a penny. You call them up and say, I don't like this number, block it, and it's gone.
So what about the payphones, huh?
Payphones are blocked.
What about all the...
You can't get through on the...
What about people
Hotels are blocked. Office buildings are blocked. You can't get through. You can't get through.
You know?
What?
You're a phone pornographer. As a matter of fact, you're a front for somebody that owns all that junk and computers, and you're coming in here advertising for your line, but the kind of fraud that you're perpetrating is like this,
for people who want to listen to a service. They don't want to listen to service, don't go in there. You don't go to the grocery store to buy alcohol.
But you see,
don't call my number.
But you see, Bruce and Gina are getting, they know what's best for you. They know what's best for you. No, you know what's best for you. You're the obscene person. You're the obscene mouse. You're still obscene.
Why are you wearing a mask, sir?
You're obscene.
We all wear masks. We all wear masks.
Why are you wearing a mask, sir?
I always wear a mask when I come on shows like this.
Why? You're ashamed of what you do?
No, not at all.
Afraid to have people see you?
Well, I am not afraid to have people see me because I do other things, and it would ruin my reputation.
Yeah. In other words, you admit that what you do is so sleazy, it would ruin your reputation.
No, I don't admit.
You just said it would ruin your reputation.
Not because it's sleazy, because that's people's mentality. There is no freedom as long as people think that what you do is wrong.
How come these other guys had enough guts to come up without masks on?
Well, maybe they don't have other interests. I have other interests to protect. That's why.
What do you do, run a daycare center?
No, sir. No, sir. But I tell you what, I will do. I will tell you how to solve this whole phone sex problem with children.
All right.
My company, my name's Joe. My company...
I'll bet.
Joe Blow, to be exact.
And I'll bet you too.
My company is the second oldest phone sex company in America.
God love you. That's really wonderful.
Now, let me tell you something, Mark. Let me tell you something. Mark, we've produced 45 million calls in the last 5.5 years that we've been in operation.
You work for Penthouse?
I have gotten exactly 2, and I'll sign affidavits to that effect. 2 complaints, one from a lady in New York whose son called my line because it was very close to dial Santa, just like this lady's problem, okay? I solved her problem very simply. I was the only one man enough to talk to her about it and write the people who produced dial Santa, and I took care of it. Yeah. The other complaint, hey.
Gina, let me come back to Gina, all right?
Let me just tell you
Let me come back to Gina. You'll get a chance, pal, in a minute.
Okay.
All right, just relax. The moment that we've all been waiting for, how about giving us, give Uncle Morty a little phone, all right? Now, wait a second. Let's not get her nervous, all right? Here's my fantasy, all right? I want you to wrap my widow wrists around a great big bedpost and do naughty things to me. All right, that's my fantasy. Now, what are you going to do? I'm on the phone with you.
Wait a minute, you're not going to actually
I want to hear it. We want to know, we want to show up, and I think she wants to help us, show up the kind of garbage that I'll run the show, shut up, and I'll come to you. Go ahead, sweetheart.
I don't
get too explicit.
I don't want to do the call, but I'll tell you where it would lead. The thing is it took me a long time to get out of it and to mentally get myself together, and I don't want to go back to doing it. But what I will say is it would start out like you'd do that, and then I'd tell you that you were a sleazy little tramp and you were my panty waist slut and that I was going to beat the out of you, and that I would rape you with a or whatever, whatever else. More than likely, I would have you beat yourself there. I had men, put cigarettes out on themselves. I mean, those things actually happened. That's what men called for. And if they didn't, you'd lead them into doing that because that's how you got them to call you back. If this were really true and it really helped people get over it and just have a masturbation fantasy, then nobody would be calling back. You wanted the people to call and keep calling. So you'd build their fantasies up. someone would call and let's say they had a fantasy about urination, you'd build it up to something totally different because you'd want them to keep calling back and then keep making your money.
Barry, let me ask Barry. Barry, look at my audience in the eye and tell them that this type of thing should not be subject to some kind of regulation. Notice I didn't say...
It should not be subject to the power of the government to tell any American in the privacy of his bedroom.
Let me tell you something, Barry. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Wait a second. Wait a second. We turn, Mr. Attorney does, and said, the government shall not tell the people. Mr. Attorney doesn't realize that if we have control of our government, we're the government, all right? We the people. We decide.
That's actually wrong.
That's what?
That is actually wrong.
That's actually right.
Because the First Amendment, all the Bill of Rights, make it clear that the majority cannot rule in certain areas. And one area they can't rule in is telling Americans what they can see in the movies, watch on their VCR, or even listen to on the telephone. That's what America's all about. That's what conservatism is all about. The individual, not the state, not the power of the majority.
We ought to grab a hold of that government again for ourselves.
I think most people who care about society, though, don't...
This has nothing to do with Democrats or Republicans. This
I
has
know
to do with people being violated. And it's not a matter of conservative liberalism. It's people who are being hurt. And children and retarded men are being hurt by this. And it needs to be regulated.
The only words that have been bleeped here have been Gina's words. The only foul-mouthed person is you. I've heard 4 obscenities. You know, if we looked at soap operas, the concept of catharsis, you go to drama to get it out of your system. A lot of people use these phone calls for the drama of it. It's a safe outlet for their sexual theater.
Al,
and
for you to
regulate it is absurd.
I think, Al, you would agree, and I think, and clearly we agree, that there are plenty of things that are very hurtful. And to get back just for a second to the children, of course you shouldn't have sex with children and put it in magazines. But my argument is you stop it before it gets into the magazine. You go after the pedophiles, you go after the child abusers. When pornography is hung up in a workplace so that people in that workplace, women, are insulted, that they can't even deal with the work environment, that's a use of pornography that can and should be regulated under our civil rights laws.
All right, I'll tell you what we're going to do.
Real remedy, Morton.
Tell you what we'll do, gang. Fun time's over, all right? We're going to take a look at the dark and dangerous side of phone sex. Then make up your mind. Stand with us. Randy, let's get down to the dark and dangerous side of this thing now. I understand from one of my producers you have what you think is a horror story. Let's hear if it horrifies the rest of us.
I started dating 2 of the operators in the Philadelphia area, and we started having sex on and off the line. Now, what it started to reverse was women started calling me up for sex fantasies, and I started pseudo, quote-unquote, working for the line. When I started, quote, working for this line, I slept with 10 other women. Wow. And all this occurred within 7 weeks.
Within 7 weeks?
Yes.
Randy, you're right. That is a horror story. Horror story.
Sir, what did you do
Randy,
before you started listening to
when
telephone?
did it become a horror story? When you had to do the real thing? Huh?
I think it became a horror story when I was working, and it frightened me how much control I really had. Because I would get women who would ask me to beat them, rape them, throw them out of windows, have sex in planes, tie them up, put them in boiling water.
What are you smoking?
Put them in boiling water.
Weirdo.
Okay, let's go. Wait a second. I have a phone call. Let's go to a phone call, all right?
What a weirdo.
Jill? Jill, can you hear me, Jill? Jill, can you hear me? Julie?
Yes.
Are you there?
Yes.
All right, Julie, I understand you've had quite an unpleasant experience with your son who discovered phone sex when he was 16. Could you tell us about it, sweetheart?
Yes. He continued to make those calls for about 1.5 years to the different sex lines. And eventually he ended up molesting a 2-year-old neighborhood girl.
Wow. What happened to him, Julie?
He was arrested, and he had to go to court. And because he was a minor and he had no other incidents, he did not have to go to jail or anything like that.
What do you think? What do you think the correlation was there that took place between phone sex and your son's molesting a 2-year-old girl?
I don't think he would have ever done such a thing like that, but by the enticements of the call and the suggestions that were made to him over the phone by these lines led him to do this. I don't think he would have ever thought of doing anything like that.
Barry, we really don't know the answer to it, pal, but, you know, a 16-year-old kid molesting a 2-year-old girl, does that bring your brain any closer to understanding that phone sex is a long way from safe sex?
My brain's always been close to what the real problem is and not what Bruce Taylor thinks the problem is. But I wonder, Jill, what happened after the... Julie, what happened the first month that you got these 976 numbers on your phone bill?
I originally thought they were more like a teen chat line, just other teenagers talking to each other. I was very naive on the subject.
But how much did he spend on them, and didn't you raise some questions, or at least try to take it out of his allowance or something to tell him that you disapproved of this?
Oh, definitely. There was lectures, there was punishments. Yes, we took his allowance away, and after the course of about a year and a half, he finally came to the realization that he was obsessed by dialing these numbers.
Julie, let me ask you a question. What kind of messages did he get on those calls?
Things like, your little sister is in the bedroom sleeping. Why don't you go in there and take her panties down?
Barry, you know we're starting to cross the line now, right?
I'm sorry?
I'm talking to Barry.
Well, the point is that no matter how horrendous any single message is, and most of these messages, I think, clearly are not about children or chickens or chainsaws, the things that Bruce Taylor wants you to believe they're all about. But I don't want the government becoming the national nanny to take the place of this woman's mothering purpose and instincts, or my instincts and duties as a parent.
Yeah,
that's infinitely more dangerous and more
I'm more afraid that my 14-year-old son is going to call dial-up-ram, believe in superstition. It's my responsibility as a parent. I don't want you... I don't want you
I'm
to be...
more afraid that your 14-year-old son's going to run into my 9-year-old girl.
Barry, listen, you know what? You're afraid of sex. You see the world as horrendous. That's what you do.
Wait a second. We're going to meet some more of these phone ambassadors, all right, the impresarios, and see what they think about all this. Stand by. We heard one horror story that was horrible to some people, I guess. Gina, I understand you have one, too.
Well, actually, there are a lot that... These are the stories that got me to get out of phone sex. One, what happened to me and what happened to the callers. One man was very obsessed with me, and he happened to be retarded, and I couldn't handle it anymore. It was getting weird. I told him not to call me anymore. 2 weeks later, I got a call from his best friend. He'd raped a woman, and he was missing. They believed he went to Seattle to look for me. He wanted to kidnap me and take me off. Another man was really obsessed with a woman and cut his penis off as a result of it.
Sounds like my wife.
She had good reason.
Another man was being dominated and freaked out and jumped out a window. And they heard the crash and it went through. I had a suicide call on the line. I couldn't do anything about it because they have no way of tracing these calls, but this kid had been calling me for a long time, and I had his phone number, so when I got off the phone with him, I called the Denver police and told them to get to his house. I thought he'd committed suicide. When the Denver police arrived, his mother was taking him to school. I don't know how old he was, but he was a minor.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did you ever have sex with any of these people?
No.
Never.
No.
You stayed as fresh as the driven snow.
I met 2 people from the line, and they were people that I talked to. I mean, not all of the calls were sex. They're right.
I mean, you didn't have it, for instance, like Chubby. Where is he? Huh? Yeah.
But
I mean, listen, he did all right for himself. It turned only into a horror story when he had to do the real thing.
I didn't...
To the women, it turned into a horror thing.
I didn't meet the men off the line, but it affected my sex life. I started experimenting with things that I had no conceivable idea existed before I started working for phone sex. And then...
Like orgasm. What's the matter with you?
Well, let me go to Joe a second. Joe, you have a tape. Do we have a tape of Joe's service? Huh? Let me hear that tape. Punch it up.
Hi, I'm Carol, and I sell real estate. I'm beautiful, but I usually play hard to get. That is, with everyone but you. I love to show you properties, and on the way there, I dream about that fantastic of yours. Oh, yeah. Pull over and let me it. I would never think of doing this with anyone but you. Let's get naked and yeah, baby. Let me sit on your... Oh, it's...
That's enough. I don't need any more of that crap.
That's it, isn't it?
I mean,
Bruce
that's
Taylor.
got more
Ask Bruce
beeps in it than a New York traffic jam.
Could I ask Bruce a question? Okay, there's an obviously adult woman talking about a fantasy that only the beeps turned me on. But do you honestly think the federal government ought... Do you honestly think the federal government ought to be listening to those calls and deciding that some of them are so bad in your moral judgment that people ought to go to jail for 2 or 3 or 5 years for playing it? That's the question. Adult listeners.
Well, you let them answer. It's a fair question, Gina.
Yeah, it is a fair question, and CDL believes that since it is illegal... I think there's 2 points. One, it's obvious from listening to this show that the only people they can design these services for are immature adults who are a little sick and kids. And the government has an interest in protecting this kind of material from those people, and it is now a crime to put any commercial obscene or indecent phone sex services on after July 1st. It'll be a crime, and yes, the U.S. attorneys should prosecute these people. People should call up and demand that the FBI...
Does your pea brain result in not letting you take care of your pee-pee?
There are only 3 things that are wrong with that ban. 1, it's unconstitutional. 2 courts are looking at it now, and I think they're going to find it unconstitutional. It's un-American. It's also stupid. Because it doesn't deal with the real issue, which is keeping minors out of the system. Your proposal, your solution to ban it out of the lives of adults
How do we keep the minors out of the system? Maybe that's what we've got to concentrate.
You block it from those
out of the system. You just call up your phone company and you ask them to block your phone
A
number.
lot of people don't know that service is available.
Well, now I'm making it known to everybody that's watching that you call your phone company and you block it up.
Everyone doesn't look at his T-shirt. I mean, a lot of people don't know that's available.
The phone company sends a notice to everybody out there.
We'll be right back.
Audiences. What about your audience?
We'll get to the audience. They have a hell of a lot more answers than that.
Some of the...
Right before we go to our audience, let me turn to an old cantankerous opponent of mine for quite a long time, Al Goldstein. Al, after listening to all this, look, you're a guy who's put on a few pounds, right? You probably have a difficult time getting sex now. Don't you think?
I more like you do.
Doesn't that make you think that maybe these kids, instead of using the telephone, should be for phone sex, should be watching Pee Wee Herman instead of playing with their Pee-wees? Huh?
Mort, you know the issue is, and I think Barry Lynn's right on target, which is the world of sexual fantasy is a positive. You can, in any instance, come up with horror tales. These exceptional cases, anything can be misused. I'm sure what happens if somebody watches one of your shows, which, by the way, I respect you for a lot of your civil libertarian points of view, even though you're retarded in a whole lot of other points of view. But in the First Amendment, listen, I genuflect to a high degree of imbecility. But in the area of some people watching your show, they may run amok and espouse some of your retarded points of view. That's the danger of freedom. And I'd rather
Believe me, they haven't, or you still wouldn't exist.
You said that you care about what happens to the kids. Then why aren't you for regulating
What about
it?
the parents? Have you ever heard the word, I'm a parent, you are not. You know, you don't know anything about parenting. I'm responsible for inculcating
Julie, are you
in
still
my
on the
child
line?
conditioning.
Is Julie on the line? I need her.
How do you know? You're a retard.
Pennsylvania.
You're boasting about your masturbatory habits. I mean, I think that's incredible. Now, what do you want, applause?
No. Pennsylvania has now taken the initiative. On July 1st of this year, the 976 sex lines and talk lines will be shut down.
Now, listen, listen, you're the Rambo of masturbation. We have other things to talk about. Cut it out now. Lord, I still want to know about, you were talking earlier about sex with Santa Claus. Were the reindeer thrown in?
I doubt. He wants to know if in the sex with Santa Claus the reindeer were thrown in. Obviously not, because you would have gotten the horns, pal. Right. Now, let me go to this gentleman. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, Mort. How are you?
Good.
Mort, I've been watching your show, and I see these 4 sharks here in pinstripes, and I think basically they're not adding anything to the American system whatsoever. I mean, no wonder why Japan and Western Europe are moving ahead of us. I mean, what kind of business? What kind of legitimate business?
They have houses. They go.
I'm an idiot.
They have everything. They're not worried about your problems because you're afraid to make a phone call.
I'm not afraid to make a phone call. I think the majority of people that make these phone calls are sick. They need money.
Look, we live in America. We don't live in Japan. We don't live in Russia.
Don't spit on me, buddy.
Sorry about that. And your hair looks lovely, too.
Yeah, so does yours.
I know, thanks. Listen, we're not in Russia. We're in America. Where it's supposed to be free to do what we want to do. You want to get regulated for everything in the world? You're out of your mind.
The people that are calling up here are sick. Instead of spending money for your rotten phone service, they should be going to a psychiatrist.
By the way, I don't have a phone service, but go on.
Well, I don't know what you're doing
I'm just sitting over here.
Oh, is that right?
This guy is one of the lowest.
But go back to Russia.
With his phone service. This guy, well known as a sleaze. That's as sleazy as they come. Ma'am, go ahead. Okay, please.
I think...
Sorry about that.
Quiet, please.
Two sharks.
Quiet, please. Just a minute. Let me hear this lady.
Okay, I know we have a free country and everything, but I still think pornography should be outlawed, and if not, then it should be regulated, because, I mean, we're free, but we can't just go steal because we're hungry, right? So that's regulated. You can't do that. So I'm not done. I'm not done yet, okay?
Sex is positive. Why are you relegating sex with thievery? Why do you hate
Sex is positive. It's negative as hell when it's rape.
We're not talking about rape. We're talking about masturbation.
But we're talking about cases where it's caused rape, where it's caused suicide.
She has no cause and effect.
We're talking about the little boy who raped the 2-year-old girl.
Where was the parent? How do you blame it and lay it at the doorstep of the phone sex line? You're doing it by anecdote. That's like saying if you have a drink, it's okay, but if he has a drink and crashes, all booze is eliminated. You know you're against probation.
I'm not talking about sex. Pornography is not positive.
I'm also against censorship.
I know. Look at this.
But I'm not opposed to regulation. And there is a difference.
I'm not saying there should be
Sir.
regulated.
Yeah, I think, we're persecuting all these people like the guy who masturbates on the phone, Mr. Goldstein, but we should persecute, if anyone, the man who defends this slime. Thinking that Mr. ACLU, typical liberal
No, I'll tell you
attitude.
what I defend, sir. One principle.
Well, you even said yourself that if it's okay, it's a publication, it's already okay. That's scum.
I didn't say it's okay. I said if it's there,
Yeah,
it's
it shouldn't
protected
be- it
by
should be
our
left alone.
Constitution.
What the
I
hell's
did
the
not
difference?
write, sir, I did not write the Constitution. 200 years
No,
ago,
but
they
you
wrote
guys
the
sure been
Constitution.
trying to
And you know what?
interpret it.
You've been telling the
back. Stand by. This gentleman. You, pal. You got 30 seconds. Nail him.
I have a question for Al. You deal in books, magazines. What do you think about these phone lines? Do you think they're fair? Do you think they're right? Do you like them?
Absolutely. I think Barry Lynn has stated it. Those people who want to call should. There is an apparatus to block the children. The Bruces of the world are against all sex. They hate sex.
I think what they should be, Al, let me interrupt you. I think what they should be right now is a compromise. I think you should have to special order those phones.
Just make children can't get it.
Special order. No, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you there's anything wrong with consenting adults taking in an X-rated movie or thumbing through a steamy little magazine, but for God's sakes, gang, it's time to draw the line or cut the line when kids can pick up the phone, talk dirty to some little slut for a minute, all right? Tell your phone company to reach out and shove it